Okay, we're set, Ted. Go ahead. I'm gonna mute.
Great, okay. Ready to go? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a regularly scheduled meeting of the Zoning Commission, the City of Danbury, June 25th, 2024. Let the record at 7 p.m. Let the record show we'll begin with a roll call at 7:10 p.m. Commissioner Bennett.
I'm going to call him to see if he's still trying to get on.
Yeah, give it a shot.
Okay.
Commissioner Botello.
Here.
Commissioner Cabrera.
Here.
Commissioner James.
Here.
Commissioner Jowdy.
Hey, Bruce. Hey,
Commissioner Nazario.
Are you trying to get on?
Absent. Commissioner Nejame.
Here.
Commissioner O'Neill. Absent. Commissioner Harrison.
Here.
Commissioner Simone.
Here.
Commissioner Villacrez.
Here.
I'm Chairman Haddad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Bennett wants to get on, but he can't. So can I keep him on the phone if I put him on speaker?
No.
Jennifer's shaking her head. Did you try the number? What's the number he should be using?
Let's see if we could walk him through it.
All right. I'll go to the second page here.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of phone numbers there. He's just
All right.
gotta try one until he gets through. As soon as I see him, I'll let him in.
All right, let's try the New York number. It's 1,
Try the 929 number.
not 929. All right. Yeah, look at the one that says New York. Dial by your location. Dial. It's 1-929-436.
All right, look at. I'm gonna move on. Joanne, just keep an eye. Ms. Reed, just keep an eye on him. All right.
I will.
Okay. Thank you. I will wait to see alternates. Actually, I could do 3 right off the bat. Commissioner Harrison, please sit in for Commissioner Jowdy. Commissioner Simone, please sit in for Commissioner Nazario. Commissioner Villacrez, please sit in for Commissioner O'Neill for the entire evening. The next regular meeting is scheduled for July 23rd, 2024. If we can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of
of the United States of America
and
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Everyone should have received the minutes to the June 11th meeting. It's public record. It was in our packet. Can I get a motion to accept the minutes of the June 11th meeting?
I'll make a motion, Chairman, and to accept the meeting minutes of the last meeting on the 11th.
Motion to accept by Commissioner Botello, second by Commissioner Harrison. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Boom, 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 boom. There are no public hearings this evening. Let me read the instructions for the meeting for tonight. This meeting of the Danbury Zoning Commission is being held on Zoom as a virtual meeting. Even though this meeting is a virtual meeting, members of the public and interested parties continue to have the opportunity to participate in the meeting in a couple of different ways. You can participate via Zoom and see the audio and video, or you can call in by phone and participate via audio only. Please be aware that we may have to mute your microphone or telephone to avoid an echo or some other background noise. This is also being streamed live via YouTube. Instructions on how to participate in the meeting appear on the City of Danbury website, and all of the documents and materials that apply to the matters to be discussed during this meeting, including the agenda, are also available on the City of Danbury website. As always, if you have any questions, please contact the City of Danbury Planning and Zoning Department. As a reminder, the entire meeting will be posted on and can be seen on the City of Danbury website. We will follow the posted agenda as per standard practice. If prior to the meeting, any questions or comments on agenda items are submitted via Jennifer Eminger, those comments will be read during the appropriate portion of the meeting. Finally, please remember that technology glitches sometimes do occur. Please be patient if that happens. Any changes on attendance? I don't see any. We have a continuation of a public hearing this evening. It's a petition of Attorney Neil Marcus for O'Connor Management LLC to add section 6A2A6 to the zoning regulations, add business or professional office for delivery of rental and or leased automobiles and trucks. Attorney Marcus, since we did not continue it for any specific reason, we're just going round and round like we did last meeting. So why don't you start us off? If you have anything that you wanted, anything newer you wanted to submit to us, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Neil Marcus, Kona Wolf PC, 158 Deer Hill Avenue, here on behalf of the applicant O'Connor. The discussion from the last meeting, I think, should have left everybody with a fair idea of what the genesis for this petition in the first place. We're dealing with a property that we've identified as a approximately 10-acre site next to the Danbury Post Office, lying between the post office and Miller Stevenson. Actually, the property is currently owned by Miller Stevenson, and they're going to, if the zoning works out, we will transfer that to the applicant, who's a contract purchaser. But again, as Jennifer Eminger has pointed out in her comments and in her staff report as well, that the idea of a zoning amendment is not site specific. When it's a text amendment, it applies to any property that's zoned, in this case, IL 40, and we're aware of that. And we are aware of the fact that there are significant parcels in Danbury still IL 40, though at the last hearing, as I indicated, we had comments from both Paul Rotella, who's here tonight, and Ben Chenise. I'm not sure if I saw him on the guest list, but dealing with their ideas of the IL 40 zone. Paul, in his comments, was concerned that we are watering it down by allowing something which should be industrial and really sounds a little bit more retail, i.e. a car rental. And Ben, who was concerned that Myrie Brook Road itself may not be sufficient for IL 40 uses because of increased traffic over the years and the geometry of the road itself, particularly the width, et cetera. So we have two issues, and that's always an issue. We've got a lot of properties owned in Danbury for uses which were set forth years ago and haven't been amended in many, many, many years. But at the same time, the road system hasn't been changed, and we don't give a lot of consideration to the infrastructure's ability to service what was zoned in a certain manner. Now, with respect to this particular property, in that section of Bacchus Avenue that we're talking about, it handles the type of traffic that the subject property would generate right next door at the Danbury Post Office, where you have that mix of people coming in to buy stamps, transact post office business, which is somewhat retail, mail letters, mail packages, and then at the same time in the back, you have a more industrial use, which is sorting and delivering mail and accepting and shipping mail on tractor trailers. So you got the combination of the uses. The proposed use that we have, as I say, is an allowed use to the extent that we're going to have a parking lot, which is already in the zoning regulations as allowed as of right. We're going to have a automobile repair and maintenance facility, and that's also already allowed as of right. And we're going to have a business or professional office, more of a business office than a professional office, which again is already allowed as of right. So we're not really creating any new uses. What we're doing is sort of odd. We're saying that in a business or professional office, you can sign an automobile lease. And once you do that, you can go out to the parking lot where your car has either been stored or parked because it has been serviced, and you can accept delivery in that parking lot. I think you can accept delivery of a car in a parking lot just without amending the regs. But if there, when it was raised by the planning staff that you couldn't lease an automobile in a general business office, my client said, well, if we're going to lease a car, we got to be able to deliver it at the same site. And so somebody can walk outside. So that's the word delivery is not to the extent that we're talking about UPS type deliveries or FedEx type deliveries. When we talk about delivering here, you got to understand we're talking about handing somebody an operating agreement, their copy of the lease, and a set of keys, and that's delivering an automobile under a lease. So the language itself shouldn't distract people from the essence of the operation. But again, hearing the concerns, are we watering down the IL-40 zone? I mean, quite honestly, if you can have all these uses now, the fact that you can also sign a rental agreement in a business office, and we had that long discussion about whether a realtor could sign a lease in a real estate office in the IL-40 zone. And I believe nobody's ever taken a position at in the planning office that would not be allowed. We believe it would be. And the same thing, since you could have a bank in the IL-40 zone, I'm not sure anybody would say that the bank can't do an automobile lease, because they do that. Banks provide automobile financing, and some of the methods of financing are leases, buyouts. It's a common method. So again, if it were the branch of a bank in the IL-40 zone, I don't think anybody would come in and say, oh, by the way, you got a zoning violation. You can't sign. You can sign a promissory note. You can sign a mortgage, but you can't sign a lease for an automobile. So I say that we are clearing up what I consider to be an anomaly in the regulations caused by the interpretation that you want to put, that anybody wants to put on what an automobile lease is. So then I took a harder look after our last meeting at the IL-40 zone. And again, I'm going to point out to the commission that by special exception in the IL-40 zone, you can have an airport. And in fact, the only airport in Danbury is in the IL-40 zone. And interestingly enough, it's directly across the street from the property we're talking about. But an airport allows storage space, much like a parking lot. It allows aircraft maintenance, much like the maintenance facility we're talking about for automobiles and trucks. It allows shops. It allows rental facilities. So you are allowed to rent automobiles at an airport located in the IL-40 zone. You can also rent airplanes too. But right across the street from this property, in the exact same zone, you can rent an automobile, which is not uncommon. I mean, Danbury is a small airport, but any major airport has all sorts of car rental agencies strewn out over the airport itself, where they store, they maintain, and they deliver cars under rental agreements. So that was something that we did not discuss at the last meeting, but certainly the request here is absolutely consistent. The only difference is that it's by special exception as opposed to a use as of right. And to the extent that that becomes an issue, I believe that the commission has the authority to, if pass the amendment with a restriction, and the restriction would be pass it as a special exception, except and not as a allowed by right. I think that it's within your inherent powers as a zoning commission to take a proposed amendment to the regulation and narrow it down as you adopt it. You can't broaden it. You could. So, for example, if I'm talking here about leasing automobiles and trucks, you couldn't say, and we're going to add boats in there too. We want to be able to lease boats there. That wouldn't be something that would go beyond. But if the proposal is to allow it in the zone, I believe that you have the inherent authority to say, yeah, we'll allow it in the zone, but consistent with section B1 and B2, we're going to make that a special exception. And that would be fine. That would work. It would not be a problem. This project could move forward. The other thing that's allowed in the zone by special exception now is the it's item B16. B16 currently says storage, sale, rental, and or repair of construction equipment. So some of you may recall that up until about 2 years ago, on the corner, if you came down Bacchus Avenue and took a right turn on Kenosha and passed by the Danbury Square Mall and the old trailer park on your right side, you'd come across a property that had all of these large cranes and forklifts and everything else. And that was a company, I'm trying to remember, it was Graybar maybe, that was there for a number of years. It was merely a construction rental facility. That's where they rented construction equipment. I guess you could purchase and rent construction equipment. So again, to say that what we're requesting here is inconsistent with the zone is not really correct, because that's an IL40 zone as well. So at the end of the day, I think we're slicing the pie very thin to say that the request is a significant change to uses allowed in the IL40 zone. I think that if you look at our application, the reasons we've given for the application, what's currently allowed in the zone, I would suggest that it just makes sense to clear up any ambiguity, and I called it an ambiguity in the application, that the business office already allowed could include rental of automobiles. To the extent that my client really wanted to be razzle-dazzle, it could open up a small branch office of a bank in the building. And then you could say, well, you can go into the bank and you can sign a car rental agreement in the bank. But that would be an attempted end run around regulation that really a prohibition, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you think about it, there are a lot of things that you can rent that are so similar to automobiles, including automobiles themselves on the airport across the street, that there's no reason at this point to deny the application to amend the regulation. And as I say, if the only concern of the commission or the staff is that we'd like to have some more controls over the site, having a business office that rents cars, then you make it a special exception. But other than that, I don't have a lot to add, except that I really do think that the proposal, if it ever moves forward, is an economic benefit, clear economic benefit to the city of Danbury, because if you look at that 10 acres for other IL40 uses, then we're going to run into some of the same concerns that Ben Chenise brought up last meeting. And I agree with them. You want to limit, the type of traffic, but the type of traffic that we're talking about with a large storage facility, outdoor parking, a large maintenance and repair facility, in a car rental, just doesn't generate an enormous amount of traffic. Though I will agree that a car carrier will come in from time to time to the site, much like the tractor trailers that come in right next door to the post office. But we are not talking about a facility that was controversial, for example, over behind the reserve, with the issue of a warehouse and active truck moving storage warehouse facility generated a lot of concern about traffic. This use will generate very much less traffic, and to the extent that the uses are all allowed without a special exception, currently the only issue is whether it would generate more than 500 car trips per day, in which case it would be a special exception anyway. But as I say, it just, to me, it makes sense. I went through my issues with the staff report. I know that there are two carve-outs in aisle 40 where you can have car dealers, limited car dealers, limited sites, and I'm not sure that the best way to allow a car rental office is to create another carve-out to connect it to a car dealership. They're separate operations, they're separate uses, and there's no plan for a car dealership here. If that were the case, we would have a much different amendment before you. So I'm happy to answer any more questions that people have, but I mean, I think that the logic that supports this is there, and I think there's a great opportunity to add to the economic base for the modern facility of the site. And
Thank
that's
you.
it.
Thank you, Attorney Marcus.
Thank you.
Let the record show that Commissioner Bennett is here at 7:21. And if I may, we're going to look for some questions for Attorney Marcus at this time. But before we do that,
Before you do that, though,
Sure.
if Commissioner Bennett, does he want me to repeat anything that he missed?
no,
Kidding you. He'll listen to it on tape.
yeah.
He's been here for a while. He's been on for quite a while.
Then I won't repeat myself. I'll try not to, at least.
But my question is, Commissioner Botello, I think you may have asked last week. You were looking to see some specifics on this petition. Was it you or someone else?
Yes, it was me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And basically, we wanted to be able to get some idea of what we're looking at from this initial of the application and what would result in and how it would affect the neighborhood. But the big discussion that I've heard tonight and previously is about traffic. But my question to Attorney Marcus is that because traffic is such an issue and it might impede on this environment, is there any question or is there any thought that you have a traffic study? Have you started it? Have you resulted in a traffic study that you could tell us for sure that this is under 500 trips per day? Or this is just a thought that you think that this is the way it's going to go?
If I may answer, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Attorney Marcus. Sure.
we have not done, we haven't done a traffic study yet. But the reason I say if it does create more than 500 car trips per day, then we need to present a full traffic report because it becomes a special exception. The commission has the opportunity to require that if they adopt the amendment as a special exception, in which case we would have to do a traffic report if we had 200 car trips per day. I mean, if the concern really is traffic, and I respect, as I say, Ben Chini's comments last meeting, I have gotten authority from the client, the applicant, to make this a special exception, which also, by the way, is addressed in the staff report as well, where it's saying other automobile uses are special exceptions. So that would address it. And to the extent that road improvements are required for the specific use, then an applicant would have to do them, but it would have to be unique to the specific use as opposed to the zone itself.
Okay, thank you. And the other question that I had was that you were thinking about giving us a better idea about how large this operation would be. And you said you typically be over 40,000 square feet. Were you able to talk to the applicant to find out what your intentions are? Like, are we talking about 100,000 square foot warehouse there, or a storage area for cars, or open space?
I got a rough bit. I did get a rough estimate. So you got a 10-acre site, but if any of you actually went out and looked at the site. You've got significant grade, and the back couple of acres of the site really will not be developed at all, as they abut Yield Road. So you got an acre or two that just have too much grade up to Yield Road. So the site will be developed from the front side, and the thinking is that you'll have probably an 80,000 square foot building and probably an equal size parking area. And of course, the rest of it, you just need to have, traffic movement and everything, so that if you've got 10 acres of space, 8 acres of really usable property, the building and the parking area would probably be somewhere near 50% of that.
So now we're looking at a total of around 160,000 square feet
Yeah,
with
between
outside
building
and inside.
and parking area. Yeah,
Okay,
that's a rough estimate.
thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Botello. Commissioner Botello, I didn't cut you off. You done for now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Marcus. Commission members, let me remind you that this is not site specific. This is for the entire IL 40 zone in the city of Danbury. We're concentrating a lot on, and I'm giving the, I'm letting the room address it somewhat specifically to the parcel, but this is not specific to the parcel. This covers the entire IL 40 district. Any other questions of Attorney Marcus at this time, commission members? Any other questions at this time? Before I move on to anyone else, I want to just test. Commissioner Bennett, can you unmute so we can hear your voice, please? I want to make sure that you're not trying to ask any questions, Commissioner Bennett. I don't hear.
Hey, Teddy, I'll try calling him on the phone.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that before I move on, that he's not there yet. Commissioner Bennett.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm
Okay.
unmuted.
I just wanted to make sure that your phone or your connection was working in case you were out there trying to ask a question or get my attention and wasn't able to. You're all set for now?
Well, no, I'd like to ask a question of
Sure. You got the floor. Go ahead, Commissioner Bennett.
Okay. How many vehicles in your pro forma do you plan to lease?
That I don't have that. I don't have their business operating plan to that extent.
That's shocking to me. How do you put that together and ask for that much land and a rezone when you don't know how many cars you plan to lease?
Oh, because I
don't understand that, because I had to do that for motor vehicles. A dealer, you have to give a plan for how many cars you're going to stock. So
that's correct.
You should have that way in advance.
I think, Bruce, you got to understand, this is not going to be a dealership, and they're not going to go through that same process. But the facility.
Well, that's my question, though. I don't understand that, because have you been to motor vehicle to request a license to do this?
Have I personally?
Well, the owners of the property.
Okay. I gotta distinguish this thing. Hang on 1 second. Bruce, I don't think you understand the concept. Basically, they're building a distribution facility. This is a hub for the company to distribute vehicles. But they do want the ability to lease vehicles in the facility. But the bulk of the reason they need a building this size, I mean, nobody in Danbury has a car leasing facility that requires an 80,000 square foot garage or even a 2-acre parking lot. This is a regional facility for the distribution of vehicles amongst a hub of various local sites. So that's what has been described to me as the program. But in the interim, make up a name. It's the XYZ Leasing Company. but or it's a, Penske truck, whatever. In the interim, they would have the ability, if you or I needed to lease a car or a truck or whatever, we could go into the office and lease one because they're all on the site there. They're all available. So I don't see the leasing office as the focal point of this facility. I think it is more of a distribution facility. And to this extent, the licensing you're talking about is not the licensing that's required. It's a much different license, from my understanding. But by the way,
I have to question that because leasing is no other than an alternative to buy a car. You can pay for pennies or dollars, or you can lease it. It's a sales transaction. It's not just a gimme. It's not a rental. Totally different.
Oh, no question. I mean, so for example, you know where Hertz has its rental facility in Danbury right now?
Yes.
Tulane Lane.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm involved in the sale of that property just a couple of years ago, and I was questioning my client who was buying it about the viability of that location for car rental. I said it's an awful location for a car rental. It's in the middle. It's off the beaten track on the back street. And my client was quick to say the bulk of what they do is fleet leasing. The retail trade at that Hertz is pretty small. It's a fleet leasing company. And so to the extent that the client here is doing fleet leasing, yeah, I mean, you have a lot of cars that could come in and out, but you don't have the daily traffic. People, when they lease a car, for 2 years or 3 years in a fleet, they're not back and forth every day.
Who is going to service these cars?
They are. They are.
Who's they?
The operator, the company that is going to be the tenant. And by the way, the client here is merely a real estate development company. It builds the facility and leases it. The operating company will maintain vehicles. O'Connor is not a car rental or leasing company at all. They're a real estate development company.
Well, I have to get back to the traffic situation because, again, I've been doing this for my whole life.
I know.
You're talking about tractor trailers going to auctions and picking up cars. I know exactly what you're trying to do. Pick up cars, bring them there, either put them to another dealer or another group and just stock them. Well, again, I don't know where motor vehicle stands with this, but I've been through this. Leasing is just an alternative way to buy a car.
That's not.
It's not unique. It's not a rental.
Yeah.
The traffic. The only way I would even think to approve this, I would like to know how many cars you got stocked there. There are no used vehicles. No. They're all new cars?
They'll all be new cars. And they're going to have as I say, they're going to have approximately 2 acres of storage. It's a big lot.
I just can't.
Because they're all, to my knowledge, they're all.
I just can't understand what you're trying to do and get around and forget the zoning for a minute. Our job is to approve a zoning change, and what's that zoning going to be used for? And you're going to sell cars there in a way of a lease. First of all, you have to get a license for motor vehicles to do that. There's no doubt in my mind about that. I just went through it. You need to do that. So you're going to build a shop to repair these cars. It's going to have a lift, it has a washing area. It's going to be a dealership. You need to have a dealership.
Well, that's not what they're planning. And we had this discussion, and I can tell you that these people don't sound unintelligent. Actually, they sound fairly successful.
I think if I can, I appreciate and respect the and I don't mean this disrespectfully, the secrecy around this company's business plan. They sound like they have something that they want to keep under wraps because it's new or it's innovative or it's not in the area. They think they found a good spot to do it. They can have an advantage over others in either Danbury, Connecticut, tri-state area, or all of New England. But that I think we're talking a lot about the business when it's really a zoning issue. And it's not site specific. So, I thank Commissioner Bennett's knowledge on the subject, and Attorney Marcus is trying to answer it as best as he can, but there's more to it than just this not known business plan that we're dealing with here. And I don't think I think we could keep going back and forth all night on this. I think I believe everything Commissioner Bennett is saying. He's got the experience and he knows about it, and he's speaking factually. And I know Attorney Marcus is speaking to the best of his ability of what his client wants to do without divulging everything. So that's my 2 cents on that particular matter. Commissioner Bennett, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Well, one other point, and we've talked about it, and again, I don't want to kick this around too much, but you're going to have more than one tractor trailer, and it's going to be a car carrier. It's going to carry 9 cars up that road. And I will bet, unless we can put some type of limit to that use, there'll be probably one day that you'll have 5 cars. You're going to have another day that you're going to have 10 truckloads of cars going up to that point. And I know people that are doing what you're saying. I get it. I understand it. But they tie it to their car dealership. If you don't have the certificate from motor vehicle to approve that, I don't know how you're going to do it. But again, my concern, let's forget that for a moment, is going to be the traffic. I was involved with American Motor Cars and what they went through to get that permit to sell 75 cars on that property. That's all they wanted to do. It's 75 cars. And you're going to stock 100, 200 vehicles for new car dealers? I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Thank you.
Again, if I can, just the example you gave, Bruce, if it were a distribution point for new car dealers,
yes,
it would not require a motor vehicle new car dealership license.
You would be a distributor. In the
That's
state of Connecticut, you would be a distributor because you're not handling the title.
That's correct.
You don't touch the title. Title passes through.
Yep, that's correct. Yep. As I say, for all I know, that's what they want to do. But at the same time, because they have cars that they're going to have available to lease because that's the business they're in, they want to be able to do it in their office.
I have to quote one more law in the state of Connecticut. A car has to be delivered. A new vehicle has to be delivered from the selling franchise dealer. That means that I cannot start selling Chevrolets on my Maserati lot.
Correct.
I can't do that.
Correct.
So you're going to have to somehow get around that, and I don't see how you can do it. If you have title for that car and I come in and I lease it from you, you're not going to give me the title until it's paid off. Same thing if I buy a car, but the title has to be held in the dealership. You just can't have people selling cars off a lot, new cars. They won't do that. It violates the Levin law in the state of Connecticut. So there's so many things that, as I thought about this is nothing new, by the way. I've heard this concept a zillion times and never has it gotten off the ground. So these gentlemen that are doing this must know a lot more than I do, or they have somebody in a motor vehicle is going to push this thing through, which I doubt very much. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Bennett. Any other questions, commissioners, of Attorney Marcus at this time? Commission members, any questions of Attorney Marcus? Okay, is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? So I see someone called Michael's iPad, Alan Smith, and Oswaldo Chin that I don't believe I've seen here before. Let me ask, did any of you want to speak in favor of this petition?
I would like to speak against of this.
Okay, petition. We're going to get to that in 1 second.
Okay.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this petition?
I do.
Oswaldo Chin, that would be you. You're up. So just sir, state your name and address and speak to the subject matter. And we don't give you any time limit, so you could speak as long as you'd like. So go ahead.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. My name is Oswaldo Chen, and my address is 8.5 4th Street, Denver, Connecticut. And I would like to speak against of this proposal about this hub that's trying to be that the attorney is petitioning on behalf of his clients. I think we don't need any more traffic in here in Denver. And you guys are elected to safeguard to the lifestyle of Denverians. And I think I totally agree with Mrs. Jennifer Eminger. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your last name correctly. That this should not be approved. As you guys know, Denver has been taking so much advantage of the big businesses, and the attorney is threatening, saying, "Oh, Bethel is gonna help us, is gonna embrace us. Newtown is gonna embrace us." Good luck, attorney. Good luck. I'll send you a postcard once you get that deal done, okay? Because nobody will allow that to be in their backyard, okay? Nobody. And so for us, like for example, what plan? How much money is gonna bring to the city? Okay, is gonna bring any jobs to the city? It's gonna be union jobs to the city, represented and good wages. Is that gonna be in this proposal? And but by just listening about the answers that the attorney is giving, it sounded totally convoluted. As they said, if you cannot put in simple terms, you don't know that much of the subject that you're talking about. And that's what I hear, all the answers, with all the respect, Mr. Marquez, of your answers. And also by and respectfully, and the chair mentioned, that probably this business doesn't want to give up, a lot of the secrets away and stuff like that. No, the citizens, we need to know what is going to be in there. I mean, what secrets are they trying to do? To me, I think is two things in here happening. I think the real estate machine is involved in this. I think, for what I'm hearing, they're trying to develop out of something, and then once they developed, they might say, well, the person that they wanted to leasing the property is no longer in here, so we're gonna do other things in here, something at that effect. So I'm totally opposed to this deal. For example, the hospitals. Look what we made at Denver Hospital. Every town comes to Denver now. And my son says, with all due respect, Denver is a pooping town, because they come in and they do what they have to do, and they go back to Richfield to eat and shop in their favorite places. And they don't go to Main Street in Denver to see what's in Main Street, or to dine, or to do anything. No, they come and use the service. Overcrowd our streets, and that's it. And they go back. So enough is enough to the big businesses. We don't want that no more in Denver. And thank you for your time. And just please be aware, we voted for you guys to do what the public wants it, not to do with the big businesses. And also something that Jennifer said in here, that we have to make sure that this one serves every individual and for the whole community. And I think this deal is only going to serve few individuals and not to the whole community. And you guys, as commissioners, as zoning commissioners and plan commissioners that we voted for you guys need to safeguard the lifestyle of Denver. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chin. 1 second. Let me see if we have any questions for you. Commission members, any questions of Mr. Chin at this time? Commission members. Thank you, Mr. Chin. By the way, Mr. Chin, the way we work it here is some of your comments may be addressed by the attorney in his rebuttal. So he may or may not answer some of your questions. He speaks last, and then our staff will speak. Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Councilman Rotello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Paul Rotello, 13 Linden Place, Danbury. I'm outside. You can hear the traffic. Beautiful night. You know, as I get older, I keep getting bitten by as many mosquitoes, but I don't seem to care anymore. I don't know what that means. But they itch just as
Maybe
much,
because
but
you've been drinking.
yeah, well, maybe. It could be. That's always a possibility at this hour. So Attorney Marcus mentioned a couple of things. And by the way, for the record, I went to school on Bacchus Avenue, and so did he. And we both seen tremendous changes on that road that seem to have gotten absorbed by the neighborhood. I used to ride my bike to that school. And I was there when they built, when George Stevenson built his structure, when Bob Salek built his place, where FedEx is now. There was a little shack called a Wigwam Shack. There was a dorm there. We used to swim in that pond. Used to ride horses up on Spruce Mountain. It was owned by a couple of farmers. I don't want to call them hayseeds, but they were kind of hayseeds. You know, you had a couple of families up there that owned that. And now there's hundreds of houses. As a matter of fact, Ben Chinazy and I were at a neighborhood meeting, the Tri-Community Association meeting there a couple of weeks ago. It's a well-established neighborhood built in the 70s. And even on the other side of that hill, which used to be industrial, I think Rudy Marconi was involved in zoning in the 80s and rezoned that residential. And that's caused some consternation because expensive houses in Ridgefield have been built there right under the runway. And they call us up from time to time and basically tell us to, you know, close down the airport because it's too noisy. I don't think you can have this conversation without discussing the impact on Bacchus Avenue in my book. And I get, and nobody gets better than me. I'm not saying that I'm the only one who gets this, but nobody gets this better than me. That the zone goes, that the change goes with the zone and not the parcel. But the fact of the matter is, I think the discussion's legitimate, and it's legitimate for a couple of reasons. Primarily, it's legitimate because we don't really, I don't want to use the royal we here. I don't really understand what the full impact of this text amendment could be on an IL-40 zone. And I think it's instructive to be able to discuss using specifics what the full impact could be in general in the IL-40 zone. It's one thing to argue from the specific to the general. You really can't do it in reverse. You can't really argue from the general to the specific. But I think it is appropriate to talk about what it would do to traffic, car carriers, and whatnot if this were to go in either on Bacchus or some other area. Attorney Marcus made a couple of statements in basically in rebuttal to me. One, that we're not really watering down the IL-40 zone. And, you know, I mean, my response to that is that Director Eminger seems to indicate that at least she believes that it's being watered down. And I would let staff have that debate instead of me. Staff who knows way more about this than I do have that debate with Attorney Marcus, the petitioner, than for me to have that debate. He also mentioned something that was somewhat provocative, that you know, there's a little sort of a veiled threat here that if we don't allow this, we're going to lose the business to Bethel. Let's take a look at that. There's a town called New Albany in Ohio. We've all heard of Albany. This is not Albany, New York. This is New Albany, Ohio. It's a small town. It's outside of Columbus. It has about 10,000 people in it. Ohio, for you history buffs, used to be part of Connecticut. It was a Western Reserve for Connecticut, not Connecticut anymore. Separate state, has been for hundreds of years. But New Albany is the beneficiary of a gigantic fab plant that's under construction by Intel. A fab plant is what the tech guys call a chip fabrication plant. They call them fabs. They just shorten it to fabs. And they're the beneficiary on 1,000 acres in New Albany, population 10,000, of a $28 billion, with a B, billion-dollar fab plant. Not a car dealership, not a warehouse for cars, but a $28 billion fabrication plant. If that plant were to have come to Danbury, and there's no reason why a plant like that can't come to Danbury, assuming we have the land for it, and we're not going to have the land for it if we keep watering it down. But if a plant like that came to Danbury at 28 billion, we would assess it at 70%. So you'd be left with an assessable development of about 20 billion, which would pay approximately million in taxes every year, essentially $1 million a week, and that would cover 1/3 of the school budget. Now, far be it for me to jump into a zoning commission meeting and tell you guys how to vote. I'm not on the zoning commission. I used to be on the zoning commission. And if I wanted to be on the zoning commission, I would run for it. And maybe I'd get elected or maybe I wouldn't, but I'm not on the zoning commission. I'm on the city council. And as a member of the city council, one of my jobs is directing the grand list. And I gotta tell you, it would be way better for this community, way better for me, and way better for my constituents if we landed a $28 billion fab plant in Danbury versus a car dealership or whatever this is going to be. And I still don't know what it is. No offense to Neil Marcus. I know he's constrained by not kind of letting the cat out of the bag with his clients, but I don't really understand what we're talking about. But it would be far better for the community of Danbury to have a fab plant in this city versus losing it to New Milford or Bethel or Southeast, which would be a disaster. If we actually got to the point, and we know what's going on with fab plants, we know what's going on with technology, AI and everything else. People are desperate to locate these gigantic, extremely expensive, and very clean factories, whether they're server farms, or whether they're actually producing mechanical things like ASML in Wilton, which used to be part of PerkinElmer. They need some place to go, and they're building more of them, not less of them. Quiet, they don't pollute much, they use a lot of water, but it gets recycled back in. And they pay ginormous amounts of taxes. And that is the direction we should be taking the city. So before we vote, if we're forming public policy here, and that's what we're doing, again, we're not really supposed to be talking about the nexus of this project. We're supposed to be talking about the legislative effect. If Danbury is considering its future, and it has to consider its future, that's what our job is. The future that we need to be considering is how are we going to afford the services that a growing city, there are only 3 growing cities in Connecticut, Danbury, Norwalk, and Stamford. Everything else is shrinking. How are we going to afford the services that a growing city in Danbury needs? Do we take a quick sugar fix and water down something to shoehorn something in that'll give us a couple of bucks? Or do we really knuckle down and say, look, we got to get serious about this. This could be the Danbury century. We could be the Hartford of the 1900s, when Hartford made cars, and they made bicycles, and they made spacesuits, and they made all these other things, and then they squandered it. We could be doing that. 100 years ago, we turned bunny rabbits into hats, and now we are the envy of Connecticut, but we're also a target. And other people are looking at us and trying to figure out how we can take what Danbury already has. We have to stay on our game. And my advice to the political leaders of this city is to consider what's happening across the country and consider what other communities, even small ones like New Albany, Ohio, are bringing to their community, and ask ourselves, is this something that we want to forego? Do we want to just give this up for a quick sugar fix, or do we want to knuckle down and see if we can actually align our IL-40 land, our commercial land, our retail land with companies that can come in here and not put a couple of 100,000 into the grand list, but tens of millions. And look, that's the way I'm voting. And that's what I'm saying tonight. I don't want to lose a business to Bethel. But boy, I got to tell you something. Losing a gigantic corporation, a $20 billion plant to another community because we screwed up the zoning 10 or 15 years ago, because this wouldn't be this year, it might be 5 years or 10 years down the road, would be a bad legacy to leave our kids and our grandchildren, the people that come after us. And that's my position on this matter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Rotella. Commission members, any questions of Councilman Rotella at this time? Commission members? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Councilman Perkins, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Dwayne Perkins, Danbury City Council, representing Danbury's 5th Ward. Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to continue where I left off last discussion. You know, to me, this seems like a classic end around. We're looking to listening to this petitioner attempting to circumvent the standard process of first presenting something like this to EIC. As mentioned in the last meeting, this could affect the area of Lee Farm, and you know, Lee Farm abuts part of old Fry's Corner, that Park Avenue area, and also the top part of Worcester Heights. So this could be something that would affect that large open space area if approved. Also, these projects include, if granted, large sweeping changes that affect the entire IL 40. You just heard Councilman Rotello mention that. You heard Councilman Chinisi mention that last week. And, you know, you've always heard us come online to these types of meetings because we're so sensitive about these different types of land use changes, because we understand the finite nature of those different types of properties. So I guess I have a couple of questions here. How do we move this and consider this proposal without a traffic study, which some of the commissioners have mentioned already? I'd like to also know, are there weight limits on the road, either parts of Maury Brook that have weight limits? Also, we still haven't had much clarity on this proposal. I mean, it's still shrouded in uncertainty. And I'd like to understand how we can move forward with something that greatly affects the IL 40 zones without having a full, clear picture of this proposal. So those are my positions, Mr. Chairman. I am in alignment with the negative decision of the Planning Commission. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Perkins. Commission members, any questions of Councilman Perkins at this time? Commission members? Thank you. I see Alan Smith's hand. Alan Smith, are you wishing to speak in opposition to this petition?
Yes, I am at this time.
You have the floor. Take your time. Just give us your name and address, please.
Thank you. Alan Smith. I live at 9 Olympic Drive, so I'm just up the street from Maury Brook and will be directly affected by any changes that will impact traffic flow in that area. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Chin for articulating so well the concerns of many of us who live in this area, and also Councilman Rotello as well for expressing some other concerns that I think are very relevant. In general, I'm kind of a pro-business, pro-development kind of person, but I think that from the sounds of things, the impact of this without understanding all of the considerations would be, it would be premature to approve it at this time. You know, while we'd like to see an increase to the tax base for the city, as pointed out, there may be more effective ways to do that, and the short-term gains may involve some very significant impact to the infrastructure, such as the roads, and not only just traffic for those of us traveling on those streets, but also things like if there's car carriers involved with multiple trips, you know, on a regular basis, that could degrade the infrastructure significantly, and therefore you'd be obligated to repair them. So I think there's a lot of unknowns for this particular proposal, and all in all, I'm a member of the Tri-Community Homeowners Association that Mr. Chianese was at the last couple of meetings I was at, and he's aware of the concerns of many of the residents. And while I'm not in any way trying to represent the populace here, those of us who live up from Maury Brook, the comments I've heard in general involve extreme concern about increased traffic flow and the impact to the area. So at this time, given the information that's been presented, I don't think it would be prudent to go forth without clarification on some of the issues and some kind of assurance that the benefits would outweigh the risks involved. So some of us are homeowners and residents here of Danbury. We are very concerned about this. Say we like to see growth, we like to see improvements, but we like to see it managed in a very careful way. And I appreciate the time and effort that you folks are spending addressing this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Commission members, any questions of Mr. Smith at this time? Commission members, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let the record show that at 7:58, we were joined by Commissioner O'Neill. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? I don't see any hands or hear any voices. I will now call on Attorney Marcus if you'd like to rebut any comments or give final closing discussion. Attorney Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little disappointed that on some of the comments, and I'm a little actually concerned that some of the comments are really directed at anti-business climates. So particularly Mr. Chin, who says that we've had enough is enough, he said. We don't want any more big business. I'm concerned, but that's not the issue before the commission tonight. That's a separate issue dealing with the Plan of Conservation Development that was recently adopted and any of the zoning amendments that will come out of that. But I am also concerned that the commission ought to take a hard look at the street and maybe aisle 40 should be changed. Not sure what it should be, but the comments are concerning, but they really don't address my application. The current zoning in aisle 40 allows my client to build, and again, when I say allows, all of this is subject to EIC approval and Planning Commission approval. Every application requires that. So again, to Dwayne Perkins, you don't go to the EIC first. You don't go to the EIC until you have the zoning in place. And then you take your proposal first to the EIC and then to the Planning Commission. And there's no question that anybody who builds anything on this site will do that. But that's not my application. Today, we could bring in, under the zoning, a plan to build a 80,000 square foot vehicle maintenance facility. We could build a 2 or 3 acre or 4 acre parking lot to store vehicles. That's all allowed today as of right. I'm not asking you for permission to do that. And that's not what this application is. Now, and if you did that, you could bring in, and Bruce may be right, there may be 1 car carrier a day, or there could be 5 car carriers a day, or maybe there are 10 cars. I can't imagine the volume of business for distribution of cars from the site that would require 10 car carriers, 90 cars coming in and out every day. That's a lot. But anyway, you could do that today, subject to a Planning Commission site plan approval, or if you have more than 500 car trips per day, a special exception in site plan. This amendment doesn't ask for that. And to the extent that Mr. Chin wishes me good luck on those concepts, they're already allowed in the zoning regulations. And I don't think he quite understands that. But if you read the section and read the application, these are all allowed. The only thing that I am asking this commission to do is to, and I'm not asking you to allow business or professional offices in the aisle 40 zone. Those are already allowed, and they could be 300 square feet or 3,000 square feet. I mean, you can have banks, you can have waterworks across the street, which Bob Kaufman built. Hey, Paul, Bob Salek did. You have the right Bob, the wrong last name. Salek didn't, Kaufman did, but that's okay. I appreciate it.
I thought I said Salek, you're right.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is that, you can have all of those uses. Now, that's not my amendment. My amendment is simply to say, in a business office or a professional office in a aisle 40 zone, you can sign a car lease or rental agreement, pick up the keys, and drive off with a car that is allowed to be parked on the site. So to the extent that Chairman Haddad has indicated that we're not talking site specific. We shouldn't be. I guess maybe it was my mistake to tell you why I was here, but I'm here because all of these uses are allowed on this site right now, and this site can receive 9 car carriers per day if the Planning Commission allows it. But what they can't do on this site, apparently, is sign a document. That's what we're talking about. We've made this thing sound like it's a huge, we're changing the whole theory of zoning in the city of Danbury. Across the street on the airport, you could sign this document to lease a car. Around the corner on Bacchus Avenue, on Kenosha Avenue, you can sign a lease for a backhoe or an excavator, which we did for years. But, and by the way, I'm amazed I actually had to file this application because I thought that there's nothing in our zoning regulations that tells you what type of business you can transact inside of a professional office or a business office. And we went through this the last time. In my professional office, we signed leases for everything in the world. Seriously, nothing that we can't lease and draft in our professional office. But and again, in a real estate office, same thing. Nothing you can't lease that's related to real estate. But this has gotten kind of blown away out of proportion. What you're deciding here is whether or not, if I build this operation, I have to send people up the street a quarter of a mile to the CG20 zone or to the Danbury Square Mall and say, you can sign the lease there, but then you got to come back and you can pick up your car. That's what I'm talking about. That's the only reason I'm doing this. But quite honestly, the client who's sort of following this is beginning to wonder, well, is this really a place you want to do business? Because the comments are, quite honestly, anti-business, and it's disturbing. But I don't want to go any back around another round. I just want the public to understand, the council members to understand, and most importantly, the commission to understand, it is merely the request to allow a particular type of document to be signed in a business or professional office in the IL40 zone. Other than that, I'm not asking you to allow me to do anything today that I can't already do there. And to the extent that, quite honestly, Bruce Bennett has raised some interesting questions, I don't have the answers to that. I wasn't asked to figure out what type of licensing this company will need from the state. All I know is that these seem like fairly sophisticated people. And to answer Mr. Chin's question, how many jobs are they going to have? In the construction of the site, they're going to provide a lot of temporary jobs, i.e. 2 years or a year and a half of construction. But on a permanent basis, we estimate that they'll probably have 50, maybe 60 people on the payroll. Will they be low-paying jobs or high-paying jobs? I would say they'd probably be in the mid-range. To the extent you're going to pay people to maintain and repair automobiles, they get paid a fairly good wage these days. At least I hope they do, because the cost of the dealerships for service has gotten pretty high, and in the garages generally. But the fact of the matter is, in terms of will it provide revenue to the city of Danbury? If you spend $5 or $10 million building a building on Bacchus Avenue, you can expect that you're going to pay $200,000, $300,000, or $400,000 in taxes each year. So it's going to throw off revenue. But all of those are just the reasons that we want to encourage the IL40 zone to be used for IL40 purposes. But the sole reason for this application is to allow a particular type of document to be signed in an office in the IL40 zone. Nothing else. Everything else, as I say, can absolutely be done on site today, subject to EIC and planning approval. And at the end of the day, my original advice to my client is, why are we going through all this? Just move your office up the street when you want to have documents signed. And of course, I thought I was absolutely out of my mind when I said that. But now I'm beginning to think But that's really, if they want to go forward with this project, that's what they've got to do. But I'm a little more concerned that what's going to happen when we actually present a plan to the planning commission. And if the people feel that this property should be used for IL-40 zoning because the roads are not sufficient, that's a problem. But I'm willing to get to that step, but I'm not sure that my client will go there unless he knows, or it knows, that they can sign automobile leases and rental agreements in trucks as well as automobiles in the facility that they're willing to spend $5 or $10 million to build. That's it. We're not asking to make any major change to the IL-40 zone at all. And I think the problem is, as we went through the question and answers, people got distracted thinking that we were creating some sort of new use in the IL-40 zone. No, the new use is signing a particular type of document, period. So, I leave it up to the commission as to say, I hate to discourage this client. I think it's a good investment in Danbury. I think it's consistent with what the zoning regs allow in the IL-40 zone. And it's just the clarification of what's become a huge ambiguity. And it has nothing to do with the use of the site. It has to do with what goes on in the business office, period. That's it. So I appreciate all your comments and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Attorney Marcus. Commission members, any questions of Attorney Marcus while you have him? Commission members, anything of Attorney Marcus?
Commissioner,
Commissioner Bennett, yes, please, go ahead.
The state of Connecticut has done a great job of protecting the automotive franchises. And one of the things that we do have is a 10-mile radius law, meaning that you cannot build another franchise within 10 miles. If you're going to sell cars on that lot, you're going to violate that law. So I don't know how you're going to do that, but that's the law in Connecticut.
Bruce, I agree with you 100%. And they're not planning to sell one car off that lot, not one. But they tell me that, and I'll take it the word because they're spending the money to do the project. That's all I can say. I don't challenge your analysis. I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else of Attorney Marcus at this time? Thank you. Ms. Eminger, I'll let you wrap this up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Jennifer Eminger, Acting Planning Director. So a lot's been said tonight. So I've been scribbling and making notes and adding to what I was initially going to wrap up tonight with. So a couple things. The sales or rental of automobiles and trucks is already a permitted use by special exception. It's already in the regulations. You can't have two of the same uses. And even if you entertain Neil's suggestion of making this a special exception use, you would then still have two uses, albeit two special exception uses, doing the exact same thing. Again, the zoning regulations currently allow, by special exception, sale or rental of automobiles and trucks. And there are 7 additional requirements that are required to do that specific use. The petition specifically says business or professional office for the delivery of rental and or leased automobiles and trucks. That is the same use. Now, I've spoken to the zoning enforcement officer. He agrees. That's his job. He interprets the zoning regulations and he enforces it. He agrees those are the exact same uses. It's that simple. One has restrictions, one does not. The petition before you tonight has no restrictions. That means you can do it by right, with no additional, you don't have to comply with any additional requirements set forth in the special exception or the permitted use section. Another point, Neil had said, Attorney Marcus had said, a dealership is not intended on this site. However, based on the language in the petition, we believe, and again, when I say we, the department and the zoning enforcement officer, we believe that it could be interpreted based on the leasing language. Again, their language, not ours. Their language says delivery of rental and or leased automobiles and trucks. So based on that language, that can be interpreted, the leasing is a dealership. Again, allowed without restrictions. That's a consequence that affects the entire IL-40 district. It's based on the language submitted. As much as you say this is, you know, oh, that's not what we're going to do. Well, we don't operate that way. We're left to interpret the regulations based off of how it's written. And per Commissioner Bennett, he had said leasing is an alternative way to buying cars. We agree. And that was in my staff report. And again, also interpreted by the zoning enforcement officer. Again, Neil had said, we're not planning to lease, but that's not what the petition is calling for. The language, that's what the language allows for. So his client can build what he wants, but we're left with what the actual regulation says. With respect to, again, Commissioner Bennett had mentioned the DMV licensing. I actually had done some research. This requires the leasing of vehicles requires a K7, which is a DMV dealers and repairers license. This is required for any leasing. So again, it implies a dealership. To lease, you have to have a dealership. So again, the interpretation, the leasing of cars and trucks, that's the language they're proposing. That's what, again, could be interpreted to be allowed down the road. So it may seem, again, and this has been said a handful of times tonight, that it's based on what has been, it may seem based on what's been presented, that this is a site-specific application. It's not. Those types of reviews are handled either through a departmental review, if it's permitted, which is this is what it's proposed, or special exception is through the Planning Commission. The Zoning Commission's role is to consider if this petition is for a change to the zoning, the petition to the zoning regulation is what's best for the city. This is a change that creates confusion and raises issues of fairness. This is a use that is already allowed as a special exception use. Again, as I noted, the ZEO agrees with this. Again, the applicant can operate this use right now under the sale or rental of automobiles and trucks. And he said in the previous public hearing, they can't comply with those additional requirements. He just can't comply. So the department would recommend that the applicant amend section 6A5G, not create a new use, but actually amend that section to suit what they're looking to do. So again, as proposed, it means that the public would not have an opportunity to speak, to voice their concerns through a public hearing. It's permitted by right, which means it's a departmental review. A resident can submit a letter in opposition, but the parameters are very narrow compared to a special exception. It may sound like a good idea, but it's a change that affects all IL-40 properties. So again, as I'd stated in the last public hearing, staff has real issues with this. And if the applicant wants to move forward, we're not saying we don't want the business. The right way to do it would be to amend section 6A5G. That's the section that needs to be amended, not a new use that says the same thing excuse me, but with no restrictions. Thank you.
You okay? You need a glass of water?
Yeah, no, and my water's out of reach and my voice was starting to,
Thank you. Commissioner,
sorry.
go, you can reach for it if you like. Commission members, any questions of Ms. Eminger at this time? Commissioner Botello, yes, please.
Unmute. Yes. Thank you for the time, Chairman. The question I have for Ms. Eminger, you okay? Do you want a water break?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay. So basically, I would like to know that Attorney Marcus has mentioned 3 or 4 times that this would not be an issue, and all he has to do is go up the street to the CG20 to put an office, and then he would be compliant in what they would like to do with this property. Is this a fact? Is this something that you would endorse? Is this something that is in his perception but not yours?
So Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, absolutely.
if he was to propose this type of use in the CG20 zone, it's allowed. It's allowed in the CG20 zone. So it's not a matter of me endorsing it. It's allowed. It's a permitted use, which it would require a site plan application.
So that Mr. Attorney Marcus's life could get very simple by just opening up a store down the street, and then there would not be any issues going on.
You're talking about 2 different things. Ms. Eminger.
Oh, did I misunderstand? I apologize.
Asking the question, if we approve this and they built the facility, can the paperwork be done off-site in a CG20 zone and still comply? And that, I mean, I asked that last week and it didn't seem like it could be. I think that's what Commissioner Botello's asking.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry. We would, again, it's a matter of, you can try to do whatever you want. And if we find out you're doing something else, we're still going to say you're in violation of the zoning regulations. You're still operating. The function of the use is rental of cars. If you're not leasing and you're just renting them, that's still, again, it's not allowed under, let me rephrase that. It's allowed as a special exception use already. He just has to comply with the additional requirements. So if he was to open and he was to store the cars there, sign the paperwork someplace else, we would say, no, you're still operating the use. Your intention is to operate this way. And that would be a violation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Botello, you good?
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Any other commission members with questions at this time for Ms. Eminger? Commission members.
Teddy,
Can
I ask Jennifer a question?
Yes, Commissioner.
Jennifer, you suggested in your last paragraph or statement what should be done. Could you go through that again?
Sure. Thank you. And I apologize at the end. I really needed a glass of water and it was just out of reach. So again, as I'd said, the use is already allowed. So if Attorney Marcus's clients can't comply with the additional requirements in 6A5G, which is the special exception additional requirements, and I'll go through these quickly just for the rest of the commission if you don't have the regulations open in front of you. And this was amended September 16th, 2020. Again, 7 requirements. Facilities for the sale or rental of automobiles shall have sale and rental of automobiles and trucks shall have lot frontage on the same street and within 1,000 feet of a lot which is located on an existing facility for which a DMV, which the DMV has issued and which has maintained a valid K7 license as a new car dealer. And that goes on to mention how that distance is measured. Minimum lot area shall be 1 acre, has to be solely on a collector or arterial, has to have water and sewer, has to have a license with the DMV. It has to have a certificate of location approval from the zoning enforcement officer, and all other provisions of the regulations apply. Those are the 7 additional requirements that you have to comply with to do sale or rental of automobiles and trucks. My suggestion to Attorney Marcus, instead of creating a use that is basically the same thing, amend this section to suit what he's trying to do. I think he can't comply with number 1, which is the distance requirement, and possibly number 5, because again, it makes the argument of a new car dealership. And that does raise the issue of the K7 form, which does require, there is a box for leasing, a checkbox for leasing. So that would have to be worked out. That would be the department's suggestion. Amend again, and it will come back in as a text amendment. We'll write it up and it's presented to the zoning commission. That would be the ideal way to try to amend the regulations to introduce this type of use without those additional restrictions.
Commissioner Nejay.
I'm trying to understand. She's very complicated.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So again, I'll try to.
Yeah, I want you to understand this. So
yeah, I apologize.
Go again. That's
so
okay.
Again, they're two of the same uses. They're doing the same thing, and you can't have that. You just can't. So instead of saying no outright, my suggestion would be that either the applicant withdraws and comes back with a text amendment to amend 6A5G to suit what he needs to make it work on the Bacchus Ave site. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
The
Again,
thing
because
that
I'm sorry, I just wanted to reiterate, what's restricting him at this moment based off of Neil's testimony is they can't comply with the additional requirements of 6A5G. He said that at the last public hearing. So to accommodate the use he wants, he's just called it something different. But again, doing the same, rental of cars, but adding that lease language, rental leasing of cars. Again, that's already allowed under 6A5.
And is this specific to cars, Jennifer? Is it yeah, the thing that bothers me, it's ambiguous. It, literally almost down the street, we rent stuff from Superior all the while. We can lease equipment. It just seems very foggy and ambiguous, the actual regulation.
And again, I'm sorry, my answer to that would be then have the applicant petition to amend the section, not create a new use with no restrictions. If the commission wants that and wants to clear that up, the way to do it is to fix that specific section.
So basically the department is saying that if what's best for the zoning commission to look at and decide yes and no on would be a different way of submission of the petition, a different petition submitted, which we just came off of one that came into us 3 times because we wanted to tell the petitioner what works best for the city and the citizens of Danbury. We think you should do it this way instead of that way. So
I have to be frank with you, Teddy. That's my problem. Here we are. We had commercial property that we turned into residential. We've had a run of like a decade of reasonable taxes in Danbury. Reasonable. And the last couple years, we just got a new, increase in taxes, and what bothers me is, I'm concerned about the neighboring people. I mean, there's no question about it, but in reality, it's still an industrial zone there. The people move there right next to the airport, right next to the industrial zone, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, they have concerns, but the majority of Danbury is experiencing higher taxes. And it seems as though we are we're literally being nitpicky about the language and discouraging taxes. To wait for a chip manufacturer to come in. First of all, we don't have 1,000 acres to make a factory for chips here. We have what we have, and I think we should be a little more business friendly to bring the taxes in check to the homeowners of Danbury. Again, we had a decade of good results. I think we're being, everything that Jennifer is saying, it makes perfect sense, but I believe that it's hurting the development of the tax base of Danbury, which I represent. And it's not just the core people right around the IL-40 zone. No question about it. It's the rest of the city that have been in the last couple of years experiences higher taxes. So, I'm more favorable to find a resolution for this thing, so this property can be turned into, a solid tax base to the city of Danbury. And that's my opinion on this thing.
So let me ask you this, Commissioner Nijain. If you're, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but let's just say, I don't want to say you're yes, I don't want to say you're no on this petition, but let's just suppose you're leaning yes on this. Wouldn't it be better if you're in favor of a petition like this to do it the way the staff thinks is best for the integrity of the language of the regulation? She threw a solution out there and said which way she would rather see the petitioner to submit a petition. So if our staff believes that they have a solution that preserves the integrity of the regulation, then wouldn't you still be okay with being in favor of this, but let's do it the way the staff wants it, rather than giving up our chips, giving up our cards on something that's unnecessary, if they could live with the staff's new language to protect the integrity of our regulation? So if you were looking for a solution, the planning director had one.
And I appreciate that. The only thing that, again, is kind of wishy-washy to me is Jennifer said that Neil cannot comply with it like that.
But Neil can't comply with it as it is. She said that if Attorney Marcus would come in and look to amend 6A5G, then what he cannot comply with today, he would look to amend to bring himself into compliance. That would make the regulation, would still give integrity to the regulation rather than change it to what he's looking for tonight, is the way I think I see it. Is that correct, Ms. Eminger?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman.
You follow?
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from, and I think it's terrific for the staff at any time, at any point in time. Don't forget, now I've been here 43 years on this commission, so I've jumped up and down and screamed about a lot of things, and I've been happy with a lot of things. But when I could see the staff come up with solutions to preserve the integrity of the regulation on a going forward basis, I always think that's a good idea. So here we had the staff coming up with an idea saying that, look, they can do a whole bunch of stuff right now, but there's a couple things that they can't do. And I'm not in agreement with her 4-page report. I'm not in agreement with this petition as submitted, as presented. But you know what? I got a little idea here that might help. And that's basically what I think she's throwing out onto the floor. Commissioner Botello, you had a question?
So my question to the chair is to see if we could open up the discussion with Attorney Marcus. Are we able to do this at this point of
No,
the?
can't do it. No,
Okay.
so Attorney Marcus would do this. Attorney Marcus would let us, I believe, Attorney Marcus would let us close the public hearing, possibly go to a vote, and take his chance that he gets approved or denied. Or he can withdraw and resubmit, but they may not be interested in resubmitting going according to that. Now, if they got denied, it would be of my position that if they were to come back with a substantial change, we can hear it and would not have to wait the year, which we were not obligated to hear a new petition within a year after denial unless it's without prejudice. So we can't make that kind of a change on the fly. Okay.
That'll be my request. Is it premature to ask to close the hearing?
Well, yeah, we're not done. No, we're getting there because we're not done yet with questions to Ms. Eminger.
Okay.
We still may have some more questions and some more discussion. But before we do that, Commissioner Botello, I want to just make sure that Commissioner Nejam, are you good? Any more questions?
No, I'm solid.
Okay.
I'm disappointed, but I'm hoping Attorney Marcus can come back with something with Jennifer so that we can get our tax base and our industrial and business properties taking as much of a burden on the taxes as possible, again benefiting not just isolated neighborhoods but the rest of our community. I think that's extremely important to grow and prosper as a city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Neill, you had your hand up. Is it down or is it still up?
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Okay.
So I was just concerned a little when we were talking about the taxes, like that we were getting not off topic, but there's a lot of other things that are affecting why the taxes went up in COVID and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think that that's integral to what we're doing. And I think it is actually very pro-business that planning and Jennifer have offered another solution. And I think, I came in late. I apologize to everyone. So I came in late on that chip thing, but from what I'm picking up, that's a what if that doesn't even really exist. So this is a use that's really close to a legal use, except for one thing that they're trying to do. And it seems like there's a solution. So I think that's a really positive step towards them achieving their goal.
Thank you. Ms. Eminger, did you want to comment anything before I go to see if there's any more questions to you? Did you want to comment on anything from Commissioners Botello, Nejam, and O'Neill that that had just made some comments?
No, except that, again, it's staff's role to provide guidance to the zoning commission. And I can only comment on what's been submitted through the petition. So, an open dialogue with Attorney Marcus can certainly happen. And I've already made some edits where I think it could possibly work. And it's a discussion that I'd have to have with Neil, where I think it possibly could work. But again, it still has to, go back through the process. And it would be, again, up to the zoning commission if you would be happy with those changes. But again, we're not being anti-development. We want to see businesses come to the city, and sometimes the regulations have to be tweaked, and they were tweaked in this case to accommodate Curry Automotive, for them to come in and develop, and that we now have the Mercedes dealership. So again, it was a new use being introduced to the zone. So maybe, again, I'm open to contemplating a way to carve out separating sale and rental within that category. and not have some of those restrictions applied to the rental. I think there's still concerns about the leasing, but I can talk to Neil about that.
Thank you.
Again, that would be my suggestion.
Thank you. You know, let me just dovetail off what you just said. For the public's concern, here's the options. This commission denies this petition, this commission approves this petition, or if another one comes in, this commission denies it or approves it. There's nothing carved in stone. There's nothing automatic yes or automatic no here. We still haven't heard anything potentially about what's being discussed tonight in the form of a public hearing or even in the form of a petition. Commissioner Bennett, you had your hand up. You still want to talk?
Quick note.
Sure.
Our dealer or shopping center is not taxed the same rate as a 30,000 square foot building as 70 or 200,000 square feet of blacktop. These guys are going to put all blacktop to keep 200 cars and have a building that's 20,000 square feet. So Tom, I'm not going to argue that point with you, but it's not the tax base that I would look for if I was running Danbury.
Thank you. Anything else?
I thought it was an 80,000 square foot building.
No, I think he said 40,000 square foot building and 40,000 square. Oh, wait a minute. Commissioner Botello, I don't want to go back to Attorney Marcus. I apologize.
Yeah, it's 80,000. It's 80,000 and 80,000. 80,000 square foot building and 80,000 worth of parking lot. So it's 160,000 square feet that he's looking at on the 10 acres that he says that. Yeah, I guess 20 or 30% of it is not buildable. So it's working on 60 or 70% of that, but it's 160,000 square feet affected land.
80 building, 80 land.
Yes.
Thank you. Anything else, commission members of Ms. Eminger? Commission members, anything else? I don't have any comment at this time. So Commissioner Botello, did you want to make
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to close this and put it on for future business.
Not yet. Oh, you got to do one at a time.
Okay, then we'll close.
So commission members, we have a motion by Commissioner Botello to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner James. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Public hearing closed. Commission members, as of this date, we have 65 days to act on this. Commissioner Botello, were you going to make a suggestion? And if you were, I do have a comment on that. So
okay. Well, my suggestion would be that we would move it to the old business and be able to possibly vote on it tonight. If the rest of the commission would be in favor of it.
Let me just comment on that before you make that motion.
Okay, can't vote tonight.
Can't vote tonight. We have Commissioner Cabrera, who is not here, but she did hear the tapes. She's qualified. We have Commissioner Harrison.
Right.
Did you say you did or did not hear the tapes?
She did.
I did not hear the tapes.
Okay, so Commissioner
I have the
Harrison did
minutes.
not hear the tapes. We have Commissioner O'Neill, who came in late, who did not hear the complete hearing for tonight, so she's technically not qualified. And I know I'm a stickler with this, but I do have to go according to statute that there were 7 minutes of the presentation that Commissioner Bennett did not hear tonight. So technically, he did not hear the entire presentation. Even if everybody that I just mentioned was qualified, we still don't have 9, and it has to be approved by supermajority because planning gave it a denial. So they would automatically need a minimum of 6, which would put the petitioner at a disadvantage. So it would not be right and it would not be prudent to discuss this and vote on this tonight. We actually, subtracting who's qualified and who's not, I don't even think we would have 6 to do it with. All right, Commissioner Botello?
That sounds fair to me, whatever you say.
Thank you. So this public hearing is closed and we do not have anything under old business. Ms. Eminger, am I correct? Was I correct in my statement on that? You agree?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Under old business for discussion of possible action, we do not have anything. Under new business, we have a petition of JM Zell Partners LLC, Danbury, LLC to amend section 7C3A1E and add section 7C3A4 of the zoning regulations in parentheses, limit the prohibition on auto repair for a previously approved site located within the public water supply watershed district. So commission members, I would look to someone to make a motion to receive this petition, refer it to the planning commission for their recommendation, notify all surrounding communities that need to be notified according to state statutes and departments, publish it in the town clerk's office, and all of the necessary required publications according to state statutes, and set the public hearing date as is scheduled on this evening's agenda, which, by the way, is public hearing date to be determined. So this is probably going to be heard somewhere in August. Who wants to make that motion? Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Harrison. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We will refer this out. Thank you very much. We don't have anything under correspondence. For reference only, we have a petition, Attorney Neil Marcus, agent for Xavier and Alina Gomez, to add section 4G6C of the zoning regulations, add poultry as household pets as an accessory use to the residential zones. This public hearing has been rescheduled to July 23rd, 2024. I have two matters under other matters for discussion, and maybe some other commissioners have some. Are we not having a first meeting in July? The July 9th is canceled as a earlier read. Still nothing. Got it. I also wanted to say that this agenda was filed in the town clerk's office on June 20th, 2024, 5:36 p.m. Are there any other matters? Are there any other matters? Commission members, any other matters? Staff, Ms. Reed, anything? Any comments? Am I forgetting anything? No. Thank you, everyone. Who wants to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Attorney Marcus. So there's a motion made by Commissioner Botello to adjourn with a second from Commissioner Villacrez. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you.
Next meeting is July 23rd. We adjourned at 8:57 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.